The stars burned above Aura Prime, but Admiral could not see their beauty anymore. She could only see death. 3,000 warships hung in the darkness above her world. They belonged to the hegemony of the Ascended, the oldest and most powerful alliance in the galaxy. For 12,000 years they had ruled everything, every planet, every species, every corner of known space bent to their will. And now they had come for her people. Stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dawn. Once it had been a proud vessel. Now smoke filled its corridors. Half its crew was dead. The engines were failing. Through the cracked viewport, she watched the last ships of the Iran Defense Fleet break apart under enemy fire. The battle had lasted only 6 hours. 6 hours to destroy everything her people had built over centuries. Admiral, her first officer said. His voice was quiet, defeated. The orbital stations are gone. The enemy is launching invasion barges. Closed her 4 eyes. The Orans were a peaceful species. They had long necks, soft blue skin, and gentle hearts. They were scientists and artists and dreamers. They had never wanted war. But the hegemony did not care what anyone wanted. 2 months ago, the hegemony had demanded that Aura Prime join their empire. They wanted the planet's rare minerals. They wanted its people as workers. They wanted everything. The Iran Council had refused. They had believed foolishly that they could defend themselves. Now watched as hundreds of invasion barges descended through the atmosphere. Each one carried thousands of hegemony soldiers. By tomorrow, her cities would burn. Her people would be enslaved. Her world would belong to the conquerors. "Is there anyone left?" she asked. "Any ship that can still fight?" Her tactical officer checked his screens. 7 vessels, Admiral, all damaged. We have perhaps 200 fighters remaining. 7 ships against 3,000. It was hopeless. Turned to look at her crew. They were afraid. She could see it in their eyes, in the way their hands trembled over their controls. But they were still here. They had not run away. "We will fight until the end," she said. "We will make them pay for every meter of our space." Her crew nodded. They knew they were going to die, but they would die with honor. Then a soft voice spoke from the back of the bridge. "There might be another way." Turned. The speaker was Old Counselor, the ship's historian. He was ancient, his blue skin faded to pale gray, his body bent with age. He had served on this ship for 60 years, longer than had been alive. "What way?" asked. "We have no allies, no one will help us. The hegemony controls everything." Walked slowly toward her. His old bones creaked with every step. In his hands, he held a data tablet that looked almost as old as he was. "Not everything," he said. "There is a place beyond the frontier veil, a species that the hegemony locked away 500 years ago." Felt a chill run through her body. She knew the stories. Every child in the galaxy knew them. "The humans," she whispered. "Yes." "They are monsters," her first officer said. His voice shook with fear. "The stories say they eat other species, that they cannot be killed, that they feel no pain and show no mercy." Shook his head slowly. "Those are the stories the hegemony tells, but I have studied the old records, the true records from before the quarantine." He handed the tablet too. On its screen, she saw images she had never seen before. Humans standing beside other species. Humans building cities on dead worlds. Humans laughing and crying and holding the hands of aliens who looked nothing like them. "They were not monsters," said. "They were different. They could survive things that killed other species. They could adapt to any world, any danger. They formed bonds with anyone they met, and they never abandoned those they called friends." "Then why did the hegemony lock them away?" asked. "Because the hegemony could not control them. Humans did not follow the rules of the galaxy. They did not accept their place. They fought back against the hegemony, and they nearly won." Stared at the images on the tablet. The humans looked so strange. Only 2 eyes, soft skin in various shades of brown and pink. No claws, no armor, no obvious weapons built into their bodies. And yet, the mightiest empire in the galaxy had been so afraid of them that they built a wall across space itself to keep them contained. Even if we wanted their help, said, how would we contact them? The frontier veil blocks all signals. Touch the tablet. A frequency code appeared on the screen. This is an old channel, very old, from before the veil was completed. The humans built relay stations along the border. The hegemony thinks they destroyed them all, but some still exist, hidden in the darkness between stars. You want me to call the humans? Could barely believe what she was saying. You want me to unleash the species that nearly destroyed the galaxy? I want you to ask for help. What they choose to do is up to them. Looked out the viewport. The invasion barges were entering the atmosphere now. In a few hours, hegemony soldiers would be marching through the streets of her capital city. Her people would be killed or captured. Everything would be lost. What did she have to lose? Do it, she said. Send the signal. Nodded. He moved to the communication station and entered the ancient frequency. The system hummed as it searched for something across the vast emptiness of space. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched on and on. Then the static cleared. A voice emerged from the speakers, speaking in a language that did not understand. But her translation systems worked quickly, and soon the words became clear. Unknown vessel, this is Outpost 7 of the Terran Border Watch. We have received your signal. Please state your situation. Stepped toward the communications panel. Her hearts were beating fast. She was about to speak to a human for the first time in 500 years. This is Admiral of the Oran Confederacy. My world is under attack. My people are dying. We have no one else to turn to. She paused, then spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. Please, we need your help. The channel went silent again, waited, her breath caught in her chest. Then the human voice returned, and this time it did not speak in cold, official tones. This time it was warm, almost gentle. Hold on, Admiral, we're coming. The channel closed, and somewhere beyond the frontier veil, something began to move. 500 years ago, the galaxy had met humanity for the first time, and nothing had ever been the same again. The old records told the story. A hegemony exploration vessel had discovered a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The planet was unremarkable in most ways. It had one moon. It orbited a medium-sized yellow star. Its people had only recently learned to travel between worlds. The hegemony had expected easy conquest. They always did. New species were simple to control. You showed them your power, crushed their resistance, and then put them to work. It had worked 1,000 times before. With humans, it did not work. The first hegemony ships arrived at Earth with weapons ready. They demanded surrender. They expected fear and obedience. Instead, the humans asked questions. They wanted to know where the hegemony came from, how their ships worked, what other species existed in the galaxy. They were curious, the reports said. Incredibly, impossibly curious. Even with weapons pointed at their cities, they wanted to learn. The hegemony commanders did not understand this. They had never met a species that responded to threats with questions. They decided to make an example. They destroyed a human city from orbit. 10 million humans died in a flash of fire. The hegemony expected the humans to surrender after that. Every other species had. Instead, the humans got angry. Within 1 year, human ships were in space. They were crude vessels, built with primitive technology, but the humans did not seem to care. They threw themselves at the hegemony with a fury that shocked everyone. They died by the thousands. Their ships were destroyed by the dozens, and still they came. The hegemony commanders called them insane. How could any species keep fighting when they were losing so badly? How could they send their people to certain death without hesitation? But the humans were not just dying, They were learning. Every battle taught them something new. Every defeat showed them where they were weak. They captured hegemony technology and figured out how it worked within months. They adapted their tactics, changed their strategies, and improved their weapons with a speed that seemed impossible. The war dragged on. 1 year became 5, 5 became 10. The hegemony kept winning battles, but somehow they kept losing ground. Human territory grew instead of shrinking. Human fleets got stronger instead of weaker. And then the hegemony discovered something that truly terrified them. Humans could bond with other species. The first time it happened, a hegemony patrol captured a human ship. Among the crew was a young human who had somehow befriended a prisoner from a conquered world. When hegemony soldiers tried to separate them, the human fought back with his bare hands. He killed 3 soldiers before they brought him down. He died protecting someone from a species he had known for only a few weeks. The hegemony did not understand. Why would anyone die for a stranger? It made no sense. But it kept happening. Everywhere humans went, they made friends. They learned other languages. They shared their food, their music, their stories. They formed connections with species that had been enemies for centuries. And those species started fighting alongside the humans. Within 2 decades, humanity was not alone anymore. They had allies from a dozen worlds, former slaves who had been freed by human soldiers, refugees who had been given shelter on human planets, species who had simply met a human somewhere, liked them, and decided to help. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy through fear. Humans conquered hearts through friendship. After 30 years, the hegemony was losing the war. Not just battles, but entire sectors. Species that had been loyal subjects for thousands of years were rebelling. The great empire was cracking apart. The hegemony High Council met in secret. They had 2 choices. They could keep fighting and risk losing everything, or they could find another way. They chose another way. The Frontier Veil was the greatest engineering project in galactic history. It took 20 years to build, thousands of automated weapons platforms, millions of sensor stations, an invisible wall across space that nothing could cross. The hegemony offered humanity a deal. Stop fighting and we will leave you alone. Take your allies, take your territory, and stay behind the veil. Never come out and we will never come in. Humanity accepted. Some said they were tired of war. Others said they had seen too much death. But many believed they had another reason. The humans were patient. They could wait. They knew that one day the wall would come down. For 500 years, silence had come from beyond the veil. The hegemony told their subjects that humanity had collapsed, that they had destroyed themselves as all savage species did, that the threat was over. But the truth was different. Behind the veil, humanity had not been resting. They had been watching. The monitoring systems that the hegemony had built to watch humans worked both ways. Human scientists had figured out how to use them within the first century. For 400 years, they had studied every species in the galaxy, every weapon, every ship design, every battle tactic. They had learned everything, and they had built an answer to all of it. Hidden shipyards produced vessels that used technologies the hegemony could not even imagine. Training academies prepared soldiers for wars against enemies they had never met. Scientists developed counters to weapons that had not been used against them in centuries. Humanity had used their prison as a fortress, their isolation as protection, their time as preparation. And now, after 500 years of silence, a call for help had come from beyond the wall. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship, Resolution. He was an older man, his black hair streaked with gray, his dark eyes calm and steady. He had trained his entire life for this moment. His father had trained for it. His grandfather had trained for it. Generations of humans had waited. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we've confirmed the signal. It's from the Oran Confederacy. They're under attack by the hegemony." nodded slowly. He had watched the Orans for years through the monitoring systems. He knew they were a gentle people, scientists and artists. They had never hurt anyone. And now the hegemony was destroying them. "What are your orders, Admiral?" his first officer asked. Looked out at the fleet gathered around his ship. Thousands of vessels, built over centuries, crewed by men and women who had been raised on stories of the galaxy beyond the wall. "Open the veil," he said. "We're going to answer that call. The hegemony will know we're coming." Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Good, let them know. Let them remember what happens when they threaten the innocent." He turned to his crew. "Humanity has been sleeping for 500 years. It's time to wake up." The fleet began to move, and across the galaxy, sensors started screaming warnings. The beasts were coming home. Lord was the supreme commander of the hegemony forces at Aura Prime. He was a member of one of the founding species of the hegemony. His scales were gold and black, his eyes burned red, and his claws had killed 100 enemies in personal combat. He stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched his invasion barges descend toward the planet below. Everything was going perfectly. The Oran fleet was destroyed. Their orbital defenses were gone. Within hours, his soldiers would control every major city. Another world would join the hegemony. Another species would learn to obey. "My lord," one of his officers said, "we intercepted a signal from the Oran flagship before it went silent." Did not look away from the viewport. "What kind of signal?" "It was directed toward the frontier veil, my lord." Now turned, his red eyes narrowed. "The veil, that's impossible. Nothing can penetrate the veil." "The signal used an old frequency, my lord. Very old. Our systems almost didn't detect it." Felt a small twist of unease in his stomach. He pushed it away. The veil had stood for 500 years. The humans were gone, dead, forgotten. "Ignore it," he said. "Even if the signal reached them, the humans cannot respond. They are trapped. Continue the invasion." His officers obeyed. The invasion continued. For 3 more hours, everything went according to plan. Hegemony soldiers landed on Aura Prime. They met weak resistance. The Orans were not warriors. They fell quickly. Then the alarm started. "My lord," a sensor officer's voice cracked with fear. "We're detecting a massive energy surge near the frontier veil." Turn to the main display. "Show me." The screen changed to show a section of space far from Aura Prime. At first, saw nothing unusual, just empty darkness and distant stars. Then the darkness moved. A hole appeared in the fabric of space. Not an explosion, not a tear. A door. It opened slowly like an eye waking from sleep, and golden light poured through. That's the veil," the sensor officer whispered. "Something is coming through the veil." Ships emerged from the light. First one, then 10, then 100. They kept coming, more and more, pouring through the gap like water through a broken dam. Watched the numbers climb on his display. 500 ships, 800, 1,000. "How is this possible?" he said. His voice was quiet, dangerous. "The veil was supposed to contain them." No one answered. No one could answer. The ships that emerged were unlike anything had ever seen. They were sleek and sharp, built from metals that gleamed with strange colors. Their engines burned with blue fire that seemed to bend space around them. They moved faster than any hegemony vessel, changing direction in ways that should have been impossible. 2,000 ships, 3,000, the count kept rising. "My lord," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission. All frequencies, all languages." "Play it." The bridge speakers crackled, and then a voice spoke. It was calm, steady, almost polite. "This is Admiral of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We have received a distress call from the Oran Confederacy. We are here to provide assistance." A pause. When the voice continued, it was colder. All hegemony vessels will withdraw from this system immediately. Any ship that remains will be considered hostile. Any ship that continues attacking Iran targets will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply. The transmission ended. Stared at the display. The human fleet now numbered over 4,000 ships. They were arranging themselves into formations, surrounding the hegemony forces from all sides. "They're bluffing," said. He refused to believe what his eyes were showing him. "They're primitives. Their technology cannot match ours. Order all ships to attack." His officers hesitated. One of them, a young named, spoke up. "My lord, perhaps we should wait, assess the situation. Their numbers are—" "Their numbers mean nothing," roared. "We are the hegemony. We have ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. We will not be frightened by savages." He turned to the weapons officer. "Fire everything, destroy them." The hegemony fleet opened fire. Thousands of weapons released their energy at once. Plasma beams, particle cannons, missile swarms. The combined firepower could have cracked a planet in half. The human ships did not move. Watched, expecting to see explosions, destruction, victory. Instead, he saw shields. Barriers of blue light appeared around the human vessels. The hegemony weapons struck these barriers and simply stopped, absorbed, dissipated. Not a single human ship was damaged. "Impossible," the weapons officer said. "Those readings make no sense. Their shields are absorbing energy at rates we can't even measure." Before could respond, the humans fired back. Their weapons were nothing like anything the hegemony had faced before. Beams of white light cut through space, passing through hegemony shields as if they didn't exist. Wherever they touched, metal melted, ships exploded, debris scattered. In the first 30 seconds, the hegemony lost 200 vessels. "All ships defensive formation," shouted. "Return fire, fight back." But it was too late for formations. The human fleet was moving through the hegemony forces like wolves through sheep. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, and their pilots flew with a skill that seemed almost supernatural. Human fighters dove between hegemony capital ships, striking at weak points with perfect precision. Human bombers released weapons that punched through armor like paper. Human cruisers coordinated their attacks with timing that seemed impossible. Watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had conquered 100 worlds were being destroyed in minutes. Crews that had served the hegemony for generations were vanishing in flashes of fire. "My lord," his first officer said, his voice was shaking. "We must retreat, we cannot win this." Wanted to argue, he wanted to fight, but he was not a fool. He could see the numbers on his display. In 15 minutes he had lost a quarter of his fleet. The humans had lost nothing. "All ships," he said, his voice bitter with defeat, "withdraw. Jump to the nearest friendly system." The surviving hegemony vessels began to retreat. They activated their jump drives and vanished into the safety of hyperspace. Was one of the last to leave. Before he gave the order to jump, he stared at the human fleet one final time. Somewhere in that mass of ships, Admiral was watching him, could feel it. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "We will return. We will bring the full might of the hegemony, and we will destroy you." Then he gave the order, and his ship jumped away. Behind him, the human fleet held position around Aura Prime. The invasion barges that had been descending toward the planet stopped. Hegemony soldiers on the surface suddenly found themselves without support, without reinforcements, without hope. Admiral watched from the ruins of her flagship as the enemy fled. She could not believe what she had seen. The mightiest force in the galaxy, driven away by ships that should not exist. Her communications panel beeped. A new message had arrived. "Admiral," the human voice said. "This is Admiral. Your planet is secure. We're sending medical ships and supply vessels to assist with recovery. If you're able, I'd like to meet with you personally." Took a deep breath. Her world was saved. her people would survive. And all because she had called for help from monsters, who turned out to be something else entirely. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracked with emotion. "Thank you for coming." His response was simple. "That's what friends do." The hegemony soldiers on Aura Prime had expected easy conquest. They had landed in the capital city with weapons ready, prepared to crush any resistance from the gentle Aurans. They had not expected the humans. Commander Al of the ground forces was leading his soldiers through the central district when the sky suddenly filled with shadows. He looked up and saw dozens of humans descending through the clouds. They were black and angular, moving with a silence that seemed wrong for vessels of their size. "All units defensive positions," Al shouted. His soldiers scrambled for cover. They were veterans, hardened by campaigns on 100 worlds. They had fought against every species in the galaxy and won. But they had never fought humans. They landed in the main square, their doors opened, and the humans came out. They were smaller than Al expected. No claws, no armor plates, no natural weapons visible at all. They wore suits of powered armor that covered their bodies, but even these were not impressive by hegemony standards. Then the humans started moving, and everything changed. Al had never seen anything move so fast. The humans crossed the square in seconds, their armored boots pounding against the stone. They did not advance in neat lines like proper soldiers. They spread out, using buildings and vehicles for cover, working together in small teams that seemed to communicate without speaking. "Fire," Al ordered. His soldiers opened up with plasma rifles. The blue bolts streaked toward the advancing humans. And hit nothing. The humans dodged. They actually dodged plasma fire. They twisted and rolled and dove, moving in ways that Al's eyes could barely follow. The few shots that did connect splashed harmlessly against their armor. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons made sounds unlike anything Al had heard before. Sharp cracks that echoed off the buildings. Small metal projectiles that traveled faster than the eye could see. Primitive, Al thought. Compared to plasma weapons, these were primitive. But plasma weapons did not punch through armor. These did. Al watched his soldiers fall. 1, 2, 5, 10. The human projectiles found gaps in armor, punched through plates that should have been impenetrable. Soldiers who had survived 100 battles died in seconds. "Fall back," Al shouted. "Fall back to the secondary position." His surviving soldiers retreated. The humans followed. It became a running battle through the streets of the Oran capital. Al tried every tactic he knew. Ambushes, flanking maneuvers, heavy weapons. Nothing worked. The humans adapted to everything. When he set an ambush, they somehow detected it and attacked from unexpected angles. When he tried to flank them, they had already moved to counter. When he brought up heavy weapons, they destroyed them with precise strikes before they could fire. How did they know? How could they predict his every move? 3 hours into the battle, Al finally understood. The humans were not just good soldiers, they were predators. Everything about the way they fought revealed it. The way they moved in packs covering each other. The way they pursued without rest or hesitation. The way their eyes tracked movement, watching everything at once. They were apex hunters, and to them Al's soldiers were prey. By nightfall it was over. The hegemony ground forces on Aura Prime had been destroyed or captured, not defeated, destroyed. Al was among the prisoners. He knelt in the central square with his surviving soldiers, hands bound, watching the humans move around them. One of the humans approached. She removed her helmet, revealing a face that Al found oddly soft. Brown skin, dark eyes, black hair tied back. She looked almost delicate compared to the warriors of the hegemony. But her eyes were hard, the eyes of a killer. "I am Captain Sarah of the Terran Marines," she said. "You are prisoners of war. You will be treated according to the conventions of civilized conflict. You will not be harmed. You will not be tortured. You will receive medical care and food. Al stared at her. This made no sense. The hegemony did not take prisoners. Enemies were killed or enslaved. That was how war worked. Why, he asked, why would you show mercy to us? The human captain looked at him. Something strange passed across her face, something that might have been sadness. Because that's not who we are, she said. We don't fight wars to destroy, we fight to protect. And when the fighting is done, we try to heal. She turned and walked away. Al watched her go, his mind struggling to understand what he had just heard. On board the Resolution, Admiral was meeting with Admiral. The Iran leader had been brought to the human flagship in a shuttle, along with several of her surviving officers. Had expected something cold and military, a war room, strategy displays, weapons everywhere. Instead, met her in a room that looked almost like a home. There were plants in the corners, artwork on the walls, comfortable chairs arranged around a low table. A human officer served them warm drinks in ceramic cups. "Please sit," said. His voice was gentle, tired. "You've been through a terrible experience. Rest for a moment." Sat, the drink was sweet and warm, and it soothed her exhausted body. "I don't understand," she said finally. "You came so quickly, you fought so effectively. How is this possible? How can you do the things you do?" Smiled sadly. "We had a long time to prepare. 500 years is a lot of time when you use it well. But the stories say you were trapped, imprisoned, dying behind the veil." The stories were wrong, set down his cup. Or rather, the stories were what the hegemony wanted everyone to believe. They wanted the galaxy to think we were gone, that we were no longer a threat. He stood and walked to a viewport. Stars shone in the darkness beyond. "The truth is, we never stopped watching. We never stopped learning. The monitoring systems that the hegemony built to observe us worked both ways. We saw everything they did, every weapon they developed, every tactic they used, every species they conquered." He turned back to, "We studied the Orans, Admiral. We watched your people for centuries. We saw your art, your science, your kindness. We knew that one day the hegemony would come for you, and we knew we would have to be ready." Felt tears forming in her eyes. "You protected us. You didn't even know us, and you protected us." "We knew enough," sat back down. "We knew you were innocent people being attacked by bullies. That's all we needed to know." "But why? What do you gain from this? What do you want?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with centuries of waiting. 500 years ago, the hegemony tried to enslave us. They failed because we fought back. But we always knew that fighting alone wasn't enough. We needed friends, allies, people who shared our values. He looked at with eyes that held something she hadn't expected. "Hope. We want to build something new, Admiral. Not an empire, not a hegemony. A community. A family of species who protect each other, who help each other grow, who stand together against anyone who tries to hurt them." "You want allies," said. "We want family," corrected, "and we'd like you to be part of it." Looked at this strange human, this soft-skinned, small-framed creature who had just saved her entire species. In that moment, she understood something important. The hegemony had been right to fear the humans, but not because humans were monsters. Because humans believed in something the hegemony could never understand. They believed in each other. "Yes," said, "we would be honored to stand with you." Smiled, and for the first time in 500 years, the galaxy began to change. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans were free. The frontier veil had fallen, and the hegemony, for the first time in 12,000 years, had been defeated in open battle. On 100 worlds, species that had lived under hegemony control for centuries heard the stories. They whispered to each other in secret. They shared recordings of the Battle of Aura Prime. They watched hegemony warships flee from human vessels and dared to imagine something they had never imagined before. Freedom. The Hegemony High Council met in their ancient chambers on the throne world of R Prime. They were the rulers of the galaxy. 12 species, the oldest and most powerful, who had built an empire that stretched across 1,000,000 stars. Now they were afraid. "This is unacceptable," Lord said. He had survived his defeat at Aura Prime, but his pride had not. "We must respond immediately, send the full fleet, destroy the humans once and for all." "With what fleet?" another council member asked. Her name was Lady and she represented the species. "We lost 3,000 ships at Aura. We cannot simply replace them." "Then we build more. We conscript more soldiers. We crush them before they grow stronger." "They are already stronger." The voice came from the oldest member of the council. His name was Ancient, and he had lived for over 2,000 years. His body was withered, his eyes dim, but his mind was still sharp. "I remember the first contact war," said. "I was young then. I watched us fight the humans for 30 years. I watched us win every battle and lose the war. I watched species we had conquered for turn against us because a human smiled at them and called them friend." He looked at with eyes that held no hope. "We cannot beat them. We never could. All we did was delay the inevitable." "Then what do you suggest?" demanded. "Surrender, give up everything we have built." Did not answer. He did not need to. Everyone in the chamber knew the truth. The hegemony had been built on power, on fear, on the simple fact that no one could stand against them. Now someone could. Across the galaxy, in the weeks and months that followed, the changes began. The Orans were the first to join humanity. They signed a treaty of friendship and mutual defense, and Aura Prime became the first world outside the former frontier veil to fly the flag of the new Terran alliance. Others followed. The species of gentle giants who had been used as slave labor for centuries heard that humans treated prisoners of war with kindness. A delegation traveled to Aura Prime to meet these strange creatures who did not torture their enemies. They stayed for a month. When they left, they carried the seeds of rebellion home with them. The species of brilliant scientists who had been forbidden from developing new technologies learned that humans shared their knowledge freely with their allies. They sent a message through secret channels, asking if the stories were true. When humans answered with offers of joint research programs and open universities, they began planning their escape from hegemony control. The species after species, world after world. Some came openly, fleeing hegemony space to seek shelter with the humans. Others worked in secret, building resistance movements and waiting for the right moment to rise up. And through it all, the humans welcomed everyone who came. Admiral stood on the observation deck of Resolution, watching the construction yards work. New ships were being built every day, not just human ships but hybrid vessels. Oran's science, strength, technology, all combined into something new. Captain Sarah entered and stood beside him. She was not wearing armor anymore. In the months since Aura, she had been promoted to diplomatic duties. She was better at making friends than making war, and the Alliance needed friends. "The numbers are impressive," she said. 15 species have officially joined the Alliance. 30 more are sending representatives to negotiate. Nodded, but his expression was troubled. "The hegemony is building up forces near the border. Our intelligence suggests they're planning a major offensive. They want to crush us before we grow too strong." "Will they succeed?" Was quiet for a moment, then he shook his head. "No, but a lot of people are going to die, on both sides." Looked at him. She had served under this man for 10 years. She had never seen him show weakness, but now she saw the weight he carried. "You don't want this war, do you?" "No," said. "I never wanted any war. I wanted to explore the galaxy, meet new species, learn new things, build something beautiful." He turned to face her. "But the hegemony will not let us live in peace. They will keep coming until we stop them, so we will fight. We will win. And then maybe we can finally start building the galaxy we dream of." The door opened behind them. Admiral entered, along with representatives from 6 other allied species. They had all come for the same reason. Admiral said, "We have received word. The hegemony fleet is moving. They will reach the border in 3 weeks." Straightened, the weariness left his face, replaced by calm determination. "Then we have 3 weeks to prepare. Contact all Alliance members. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot who can fight. We meet them at the border." The representatives nodded and began to leave, but stayed behind. "Admiral," she said, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." "When we first called for help, you came without hesitation. You risked your entire species to save strangers. I've never understood why." Smiled. It was the same smile he had shown her on the day they met. Warm, kind, the smile of a man who believed in something bigger than himself. "Admiral, do you know what humans fear most?" Shook her head. "Not death, not pain, not even failure." Looked out at the stars. "What we fear most is being alone, standing by while others suffer, turning away when someone calls for help." He turned back to her. "When you called, we answered because we couldn't do anything else. Ignoring that call would have meant becoming something we never want to be. Monsters, cowards, people who let the innocent suffer when they could have acted." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "The hegemony sees us as beasts. Maybe they're right, but we choose what kind of beasts we are. We choose to be the kind that protects the weak, that fights for those who cannot fight for themselves, that builds instead of destroys." He looked at the gathered fleet beyond the viewport. Thousands of ships from dozens of species. All of them there because humans had offered friendship instead of conquest. "The hegemony is coming. They think they're going to crush us, but they've forgotten something important." "What?" asked. Smile widened. "We're not alone anymore, and neither are you." 3 weeks later, the Battle of the Border began. It lasted for 7 days. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. The hegemony brought 10,000 ships. The Alliance brought 20,000. When the fighting ended, the hegemony fleet was shattered. The ancient empire that had ruled for 12 began to crumble. Species that had been enslaved for centuries rose up. The old order fell. And in its place, something new began to grow. The Terran Alliance was not an empire. It had no conquered subjects, no slaves, no oppressed worlds. It was exactly what Admiral had wanted. A family. Years later, when historians wrote about the fall of the hegemony and the rise of the Alliance, they always began with the same moment. A desperate call for help. A fleet emerging from behind a wall of silence. 2 species meeting for the first time and choosing to stand together. They called it the day the beasts of the galaxy emerged. But the beasts had not come to conquer. They had come to protect. And that made all the difference.